the state afford to have more property on its books? Can we afford to pay for the road? We're doing the assessment up there right now to see if what can be done, and there's a couple $1 million of grant money being spent to assess the property and see what can be done with it and how it can be used. And maybe the National Guard, maybe moving the National Guard down there will help, and maybe they will need a new road, maybe they won't need a new road. There's already some roads up there. I mean, I've driven through there, and coal trucks have driven through there. So there are some roads that can be used right now, and maybe we inch forward on this and not go all into a shallow pool. I think we need to be cautious, but yet keep looking at it and move forward. Find out what we own, find out what we can afford.
You know, if it brings 1,000 jobs, if it brings 2,000 jobs, I'm for it. But if it don't, like this man said right here, you're wasting your money. Because the argument, when I go out and talk to people, I ask these other people. I don't hold my opinion on everybody because I'm not a politician. My dad, my whole family's never been political. It's just been, this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to get out and represent the people. But these roads are back roads. The roads that people live on ain't getting paid. The roads, the infrastructure, bridges, you can go down Big Open Road right now, and I don't know how a bus gets through there. It's sad. We're one step away from something really bad happening on the school bus or a private citizen. So when it comes to investing your money as a state, you have to invest for the people. The analogy, build it and they will come, they don't work that much. But if we have promises to build it, I'm 100% for it. If we have jobs that are going to be here 100% guaranteed, I'm for it. Thank you.
I think we sell ourselves short on this a little bit. I don't know why we have to build the road. What we have is an incredibly valuable piece of property that's surrounded by the best, hardest working people in the world. Why can't they build the road? They want to come here. I don't know why we can't find people who are willing to build a road with their own plan. It's not that far-fetched of an idea. We spend a lot of time in our state government trying to figure out how to spend your money. And I think we don't spend enough time trying to figure out how not to. And I think that we need to sell ourselves as best we can. And we need to say to these people, if you want to be here, if you want to use our people to build whatever you're going to build, then you've got to build a road. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Because if somebody's going to be here for 100 years, $100 million for the road's not going to be that much.
Well, for me, as state treasurer, I'm pretty conservative. And I think that before we spend $100 million on something, we need to get our financial house in order. And when we're going into this next budget with a $350 million budget deficit, we need to get that taken care of. And we need to evaluate what is priority. And if down the road that is something that we can look at, certainly I think that's something that we should do. That's something that will help this community and bring jobs. But I think we need to prioritize.
I think traveling through 18 counties here in southern West Virginia, I've seen a lot of industrial parks, and I've seen some that have done very, very well, and I've seen some that have failed miserably. The difference between the ones that succeed and the ones that fail is the ones that succeed have a really good plan put in place as to what they're going to do once that's built. So I think that we've got to look at what the future of this industrial park is, how it can succeed, and if we're going to get a good return on investment once it's built, and if it's worth building a $100 million road for it. Now, personally, right now, we've heard both sides of it. But I think it's also important that we look and make sure that we are giving businesses the tools that they need to succeed. And that can start with industrial parks, but we also need to make sure that your tax money is being spent appropriately, and it's being invested and not simply just spent.
Politician refuse an opportunity to say something. Again, I'm not an expert on this issue. I read about it when I read the Charleston paper online and other papers in the news. One thing about taxes and spending and investment and all of that, just as, again, kind of a philosophical point, when people say, oh, this is a really good deal, this is a great investment, it's really going to pay off, but I'm not going to invest my money in it. I want somebody else's money invested in it. It's that good of a deal, leave me out of it, you take it over. So if the state taxpayers or if private businesses don't think it's a good investment, we should at least be pretty wary about whether it's really a good investment that's going to pay off, because greedy capitalists perform a public function by investing their money and taking the risk to bring a benefit for their profit that ends up helping the community. If they can't see a profit in it, we ought to be very careful about the state government taking your tax dollars out of your pocket to spend something that private business is hesitant to touch. That's a dangerous game, and it leads to special subsidies all over the state. And then another part of the state's going to say, well, look what they got. So now we need this up here in the Northern Panhandle. Look what they got. We need this in the Eastern Panhandle. Look what they got. We want something. And all of us are ending up paying our tax dollars to give to the government, so the government can spend money on our behalf, as if we can't spend our own money on our behalf better, knowing what we need and what we prioritize in our lives. So I'm a skeptic about the efficiency of government programs, and so I'd approach this issue with a great deal of skepticism. That's the most I can say.
Hey, Rob, I got a follow-up.
I attended the thing at Brookview Elementary on the road and the bridge, and it was to my understanding that if we put the road in where they want us to, it's the most expensive. So I asked why, and they said that if we put it there and it comes off Route 3, that they can use federal money. My question to you guys, and I think they said either at least or up to 90% of federal money. So my question to you guys, do you guys know anything about that, or can elaborate on that?
So that's a great question, and I'm under the same understanding that you are, that a lot of that money will come from the federal. And let me be clear, I'm a conservative, and I'm also skeptical about spending money. But we are in a crisis in southern West Virginia. People are leaving in droves. They're going down south routinely every single day. It doesn't a day go by that we don't have somebody post on social media that I'm moving to North Carolina, right? So one of the things that we lack here in this area is flat land. Because of mining, we have a vast area of flat land that can be developed. The difference between a passive asset and a liability. A passive asset is something that you invest in that returns money, and you don't have to go in after you do the initial work to keep working on it to get that money back. A liability is something you spend money on and it keeps on draining money. The problem in our county as to why we don't have anything else is because we have spent 100% of our revenues on liabilities. So I look at this and I say, this is our chance. This is our one chance to have a passive asset. This is our one chance to have a piece of property that I can go to Beretta, that I can go to Remington, that I can go anywhere in the world and be like, hey, come to southern West Virginia, come to Boone County. We have acres and acres and acres of land you can hunt. We have all these great things. We got rivers, we got mountains. This is the best place for you to be. If you go anywhere else, you're going to regret it. And as a commissioner, that's why I want to utilize this piece of property. That's why I want to utilize this passive asset. And this is why I support it, and I don't apologize for it at all.
I think just to answer your question, just flat out about the federal money. Yeah, that came from what's called the Reclaim Act, which is part of the Power Plus Act, which is basically just making sure that money is coming from federal hands. Which actually what it is it's coming from coal settlements, and that's money that's supposed to be used to revitalize old coal mines and old mountaintop sites. So that's where that money is coming from. That's what they're using. That's I believe what your question was, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
I'd like to weigh in a little on that. All federal money is the same as state money. And state has no money until the federal borrows it into existence. So it creates a deficit for the state, for the county, for the federal. 19 trillion and rising. What does the federal have to give you that they won't raise your federal taxes? Do you understand? If the federal gives you anything, it's your money. They borrow it into existence. So your taxes is gonna raise one place or the other. You just choose which one you wanna pay more, federal, state, or county. Anytime you borrow money into existence, you've got your budget too far out of balance. Someone's gonna have to pay the cost. Well, that's gonna be you, your children, your children's children. Understand, don't borrow, take care of what you've got, balance what you've got, create the jobs that you need, put your children to work, sell the lumber out of these hills as furniture to North Carolina. How's that? Quit selling your lumber. Quit cutting your trees and only getting a portion. Sell them the lumber. I built a gasifier. I don't know if you've ever heard tell of one, but I could convert wood, plastic, coal into gasoline, to diesel. I made that, took it to the county fair. They closed the county fair. I wanted to show you that you could have free energy, that it don't take no time. You see, invest in your people. Quit borrowing from state, county, and federal.
The question was the location of the road. The only location that I know of is the one that comes down. If we could save money and the federal would pay for the other road, it would be more cheaper and wouldn't hurt the productivity of the city, I'd say, yeah, go for it. It goes back to flat land. I think Boone County would be a great place to put an airport. I think we should open conversation about that too with the industrial park. Where we're located geographically, we're in a great position to get anywhere on the East Coast, into Europe even. So I think, even expanding those ideas. But as for the road, if it's cheaper, I'm for it. If it don't hurt the productivity.
Thank you, Nick. Yeah, I was at the same meeting. Again, there's a meeting in the district. I'm trying to be there. The understanding I had too was there should be federal money that could be matched to use. But again, we do have to put some money up to match that. I'm not sure if it was a 9-10 match or what the split was. And there was some conversation between contractors and a few other people over there as to how much the state would have to put in and how much the federal would have to put in. But there are 4 other routes besides the one that qualified for federal money. So that's what I'm saying. Why don't we look at going ahead with the routes we have now? They're not ideal. They have all the curves. It'll be tough on trucks in some areas. We can smooth those out. But we have other opportunities, and maybe it won't cost so much to get started. The other thing is, we talk about all these companies, people moving out to North Carolina, people moving to South Carolina. It's because those states are growing. North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Indiana, they're all adding manufacturing jobs. They're all adding opportunities for their people. And one of the things we passed this last legislative session, which is not very popular in some parts of this area, is right to work. Right to work does attract manufacturers. Manufacturers want to go where they can work with their people. It's not a union busting thing. Unions can still exist. Unions can still represent their people. And the idea is not to bust unions, it's to attract more jobs. Because the people who are in the unions here are having to go to North Carolina, or having to go to South Carolina, or having to go to Indiana to work. Let's have them work here. It's just one part of the puzzle. Thank you.
Some of those folks that came in and are building a school, recently mentioned in the Charleston paper, for uneven concrete floors, faulty foundations, and bolts coming out of the concrete in a crooked manner, not up to the standards that you would get if you had used union work. And these workers are not West Virginians, some of them are from Honduras and other countries. So repealing the right to work has brought these substandard workers in from other countries and is now delivering a substandard product. Now, as far as the mountaintop removal site, I think that's probably one of the best opportunities this county's ever had, to have that many level acres available for development. And regardless of the route, we need to get a road up there quickly so that we can get industrial parks established. In the meantime, we need to be looking for places to get the money to put in the infrastructure, the water, the electric, the gas, the sewage, to make that a viable place for an industrial park and for industry to locate. If you plan to succeed, you will succeed far more often than if you fail to plan.
Questions? I would like to weigh in on that one, just for a moment. Yes, you can plan that for your future, can't you? But you need to get investors on that hook, on that contract, which is binding by law, and get them a 30 or a 50-year contract lease on that before you ever sink citizens' money into that. Now make sure you've got enough contractors that's willing to pay and invest for that 50-year span to bring that money to Boone County before you make that investment. Now, if they want to plan the future that way you're assured for 50 years you've got income. Your children can work. But if you build that expecting them to come, you're going to go bankrupt and your children are going to starve. Thank you.
There's good workers, there's bad workers. There's good companies, there's bad companies. The Charleston Gazette mentioned the people coming in to Trump job and building the school there and not doing very well with their work, and they're from behind doors. We still have a requirement on state jobs that 75% of the people have to be from West Virginia or the surrounding area. It's called the West Virginia Works Act. It was passed a few years ago. So that requirement still exists for the people here, and that requirement still exists for the contractors. And as far as the quality of the work, we need to hold people to the quality that's expected. We cannot allow for poor quality. Union, non-union, doesn't matter. We can't allow for poor quality. If they're underbidding and they're coming back in with cost overruns, then they need to be knocked down so they can't be a bidder for the future. And I talked to Steve White, the head of one of the unions, of the contract unions, and said I want to work with him on how we can qualify the companies that continually underbid and have cost overruns. Because once they get the job, once they win the bid, there's no way to say, well, we're halfway through and we're going to stop and just give us more money. So there's lots of ways we need to work together. And said, it's not a union versus non-union thing. It's a matter of getting the job done well and the job done right. Thank you.
Well, you know, right to work is a bill that was being passed, and you know, I don't know if that's the reason for the bad work that's been done up there. I don't know. I come from a union home, and you know, one of the things, if it's for or you're not for, one side says, well, we're going to bring manufacturing in, and the other side says, well, you're going to have a whole bunch of illegal immigrants coming in here to work. Let me tell you why the business opportunity is not going to be healthy in West Virginia. It's because education. It's because infrastructure. It's because we have problems here. And we need to face the problems that you guys face. Those are the real problems we need to be facing. Instead of going up there and fighting for something that, you know, might or might not. We don't know. We need to have certainties in our government. And that's why, you know, I think I'll be a good delegate.
Okay, we have a few written questions from the audience. The first one is to the Secretary of State candidate. A divisive issue being argued about on multiple levels is voter fraud. policy of mandating tougher voter ID laws at the ballot box. Credible studies show that numbers of cases of voter fraud are actually much lower than reported. As Secretary of State, how will you help increase voter turnout, especially engaging our young people of voting age?
Terrific. I favor photo ID identification to go vote, but only after we put in the resources to ensure that those segments of the population that don't readily have a photo ID, which is usually your driver's license, but some people don't have one, make sure they first have the opportunity in an easy and accessible way to get a photo ID, so that when you go to the polls, you present your photo ID to ensure at the polling place that you are who you say you are and you're entitled to vote. There doesn't need to be very many instances of that kind of voter fraud for the public to say, well, we show our IDs for all sorts of things. For voting, is that asking too much? I don't think so, as long as we're fair, that it's not a mechanism by one party to work to the disadvantage of another. There's been many Republican legislatures in the last few years that have pushed photo ID. And the other side says, well, you're just trying to disadvantage our constituencies of voters. And this side says this side said that. If I could work that into my argument for my strength, I would propose it and then say, let's debate it on the merits. Because my party isn't competitive yet at the levels that we'd like to see. So I don't have a dog in that fight other than to favor fair elections. I'm more concerned about voter registration as the opportunity for fraud because we now have an online voter registration system. And I think that's a good thing. The world is going online for ways in which we do business and interact with each other. But we've also seen that anything connected to a computer and the internet is subject to manipulation and fraud. So online voter registration comes in the Secretary of State's office. Those registrations get sent back down to county clerks. And that's where we need to have a good cooperative system to help the county clerks follow up, get the addresses right, the people right, no duplication, things of that sort. I think the Secretary of State needs to be an advocate for voter registration, voter turnout, but it's done in fair, safe ways.
Another question from the audience in writing, and this is addressed to anyone who cares to answer it in your elected office capacity. Mental health care, and I might add drug addiction prevention and treatment, is an important issue to many. In your elected position, will you be attentive to these issues?
That's a great question, and as a legislator, we have done numerous things to help combat that. In my opinion, the number one reason that drug use is so high in West Virginia is because of the economy. It's very easy to get sucked into a lull when you can't find a job. Not only do we need to go about having government organizations, faith-based organizations, and different types of rehab, but we also have to have individuals working that are out there hustling, doing the hustle to get industry and jobs into the area so that those things go to the backbone. I come from a family that has lost a whole lot of people to drug use. I remember, was it 3 or 4 years ago when they had one of the deratios and there were trees all over the road and a cousin of mine overdosed, so we had to use side-by-sides to cut trees out of the way to get them out of here. And that story's not unique. So as your next commissioner, that will be absolutely something that I look forward to working with outside organizations, working with faith-based organizations, trying to help them come into this area. But the one thing that I can do as a commissioner more than anything else is to work very hard to go to different businesses and different outside groups and tell them why they need to operate right here in this county.
I think mental health care is obviously a very important issue. It's one that it's a challenge that the serious face here in West Virginia. As the uncle to a beautiful niece who was born with autism, mental health care is something that means a lot to me. And I want to make sure that she has every door that she possibly can open to her so that she has the opportunities that every young woman and young man have. I'm also very concerned about our veterans. I can see many veterans that are coming back from theaters, Iraq, Afghanistan, and other places that are not only suffering physical scars, but mental scars as well. It's important that our government takes care of our veterans and takes care of all of our citizens by offering them, not a handout, but a hand up. So mental health care is very, very important. When it comes to the drug issue that we're looking at, yes, it's terrifying. I think I mentioned before, I would bet everybody in Michigan has been affected by drugs, drug use, death in the family, an overdose with a friend somehow. That challenge is faced in West Virginia probably more than it is anywhere else in the United States. We have to look at where these addictions are starting. And it's not in the back alley, it's not at a party. These are starting in a doctor's office. These are starting at car wrecks. These are starting at the football game where someone, tears an ACL. These are starting, when you slip on some ice, you go to the doctor and you're prescribed way too many pills that the doctor doesn't know how to wean you off of. Okay, we've got to make sure, we've seen too many legislators, too many people, too many of our government officials that are in the pockets of pharmaceutical companies, my opponent included, that we've watched drugs get pumped into the state at an unprecedented level. This is causing a serious addiction issue that we've got to face. So it looks like my time is up, but these are things that I think everybody here is very concerned about, challenges that we're going to face. But I think that starts with making sure that everyone has complete and equal access to affordable health care.
Yeah, I was really proud to work with Josh and Mike in our legislature most recently. And we had a lot of people who made this a priority. And as I started running statewide, I spent a lot of time with a guy named Matt Boggs in Huntington who runs a place called Recovery Point. And it's really an awesome place. And it is an addict-run facility that has, if I remember correctly, the statistics, an 87% success rate of no recidivism. So what we're talking about is this is an organic private organization that is churning out results, getting people off of drugs and into employment better than anything that our government is able to take care of right now. These are things we need to replicate. He's opening up a women's facility in Charleston right now. It is important for us to remember that this is possible and to not be totally discouraged in the fight that we're in. One of the things that we worked on in the legislature that unfortunately for me, in my opinion, we didn't get passed was something called the Second Chance for Employment Act. And what this would do is it identified certain nonviolent offenders who had a felony to allow them to have their record expunged so that they could go get a